All right, so think about this for a second. You've just built this amazing piece of software. It's smart, it's efficient, and you're ready to take it to a brand new market. But what if that market is a country with not one, not two, but 12 official languages? How in the world do you solve a puzzle like that?
So let's head to South Africa, because there, this isn't some thought experiment. It's the day-to-day reality of doing business. The incredible diversity of languages there creates this really unique and pretty complex challenge for any company trying to operate. Just let that number sink in for a moment. 12. Yep, as of 2023, with South African Sign Language getting official status, the country now recognizes 12 different languages. And this isn't just, a cool cultural factoid. It's a fundamental part of how the whole country works. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, especially for anyone in international business. Take a look at English. We often think of it as the default, right? Well, it's the home language for less than 9% of the population. The overwhelming majority of people are thinking, working, and living their lives in languages like isiZulu and isiXhosa. And here's where the stakes get really, really high. We're not talking about translating a simple marketing slogan. We're talking about accounting, a field where every single word, from invoice to value-added tax, has a very specific, legally binding meaning. If you mess that up, you're not just creating a little confusion. You could be risking huge fines, operational chaos, the whole shebang. So how do you even begin to tackle this? How do you build a bridge across that kind of linguistic divide? Well, you need a tool that's not just monolingual, but can speak and operate in many languages, all at the same time. Let's check out how one piece of software does exactly that. The hero of our story here is an accounting program called osFinancials, or sometimes TurboCASH. And its superpower is this one specific feature: the multi-language accounts plugin. This is the tool designed to go head-to-head with the challenge we've been talking about. So how does this thing actually work? It's actually a pretty elegant three-step dance. First, you translate the absolute guts of this system, the chart of accounts, all the inventory descriptions, everything. Then, and this is the magic part, every single user just picks their own language. So you can have a manager who speaks English looking at the exact same data as a bookkeeper who speaks isiZulu, but they each see it in their own native tongue. And finally, when you need to print an invoice for a client, you just generate it in their language. It's brilliant. And this quote from the system's own documentation, it just nails it. It's not about having 12 different accounting systems. No way. It's about having one single source of truth, one set of books that everybody, no matter what language they speak, can work on together. I mean, that is a total game changer. Okay, so having a system like this sounds great in theory, but where does the rubber really meet the road? Well, it's when you come up against that immovable force of nature, the tax authority. So, here's the million-dollar question. Does all this fancy language switching actually hold up when it's time to file your taxes? To figure that out, we have to take a look at the South African Revenue Service, better known as SARS. And right away, we see this really fascinating gap between policy and practice. On paper, SARS is committed to using all the official languages to serve taxpayers. That's the stated goal. But in reality, when you go to file your taxes online, the system you're using, it's pretty much all in English. And that creates the very problem this software was built to solve. It bridges that gap between how a person actually works and the official language of compliance. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so you just translate it. Big deal. But as you're about to see, getting software to speak another language, a process called localization, is so much more complicated than just copying and pasting into a translation app. It's part art, part science. I mean, just look at some of the traps you can fall into. You translate a word and suddenly it's twice as long and it completely breaks the button it's supposed to be on. Or you translate the word order one way here and another way over there, and now your user is totally lost. You absolutely, positively have to get legal terms perfect. And get this, sometimes a translator might use a simple character, like a double quote, and that one character can literally crash the entire program. So all of this really points to one critical truth. A direct, word-for-word translation is almost guaranteed to fail. Context is everything. You need nuance, you need to understand how the software actually works, not just what the words mean. And you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at a real-life example from the isiXhosa translation file for this exact software. The original literal translation for create set of books came out meaning build the amount of the book, which makes no sense. Adjust stock became measure or compare stock. Again, that's not what you're doing. And update ledger was translated as sequence the ledger. These aren't just tiny mistakes. They completely change what you think the software does. You see? Getting it right meant having a human who understood the intent behind the words. They knew that in accounting, you make a set of books. You don't build it like a house. You adjust or fix your inventory levels. You don't measure them with a ruler. And that right there is the difference between a tool that feels intuitive and one that's just a frustrating mess.
Okay, so we've gone pretty deep into the technical weeds here. Let's zoom out. Why does this whole story really matter? What's the big picture takeaway from all of this? Because at the end of the day, this was never really a story just about software. It's a story about access. It's about who gets to fully participate in the digital economy and who gets left behind by invisible barriers that are basically concrete walls to them. When you get localization right, you unlock so much potential. Suddenly, you can reach millions of new customers. You empower people to work faster and more confidently because they're using the language they're most comfortable with. You slash the number of errors in really critical jobs. And you help businesses actually follow the rules. It literally makes everything work better for everybody. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We talk a lot about accessibility in tech, but we usually mean it in terms of things like screen readers or physical disabilities. This story, though, it kind of forces us to ask a bigger question. In a world that is more digital and more global every single day, what does it really mean to make our tools accessible to everyone? It seems the answer is about a whole lot more than just words.